examined the key political, social and economic changes in Italy during the 1990s, including the Mani Pulite investigations, the collapse of the First Republic, and the rise of Silvio Berlusconi's populism. How did these events shape Italy's trajectory both in the 1990s and in the decades that followed? Introduction. Backdrop. The instability yet innovation of the Italian 1980s and lingering trauma of the years of lead as a prelude to the transformations of the Italian 1990s. Emerging from the trauma of the years of lead and a turbulent 1980s of innovation and instability, Italy entered the 1990s facing a full-blown political crisis. As Paul Ginsberg describes on pages 285 to 286 of Italy and its Discontents from 2003, the collapse of the old ruling parties in 1992 raised urgent questions across all areas of public life, from corruption to the urgent need for a whole new political order. In Italy in the 1990s, a major shift occurred when new incentives shattered old constraints. The Mani Pulite investigations exposed massive corruption. The 1993 referendum altered the electoral system, intensifying competition and weakening dominant parties like the DC and PSI. Meanwhile, dissatisfaction amongst extremist voters became less radical, and that is from Morellino, 1996, pages 55 to 60. Following upheavals such as Mani Pulite and political reform, national dissatisfaction paved the way for Silvio Berlusconi, who, with his blend of football populism, business credentials and media dominance, skillfully inserted himself into the political scene and came to define the decade. On the social front, Italy transitioned from a country of emigration to one of immigration for the first time in its modern history. Though gli anni di piombo continued to echo through the collective memory, both policies and people were increasingly eager to move on. Before we dive in, I want to be clear about my approach. Rather than focusing narrowly on a single episode or theme, my aim is to provide a panoramic overview of the decade. Each point, political collapse, corruption, economic shifts, social change, the rise of Berlusconi, is a critical piece of a larger puzzle. Only by assembling the full picture can we understand how these events reshaped Italy, both during the 1990s and in the years that followed. So, let us now begin to unravel the Italian 1990s together. Chapter 1, Mani Pulite, Clean Hands, Massive Corruption Investigations and Collapse of the First Republic. Nelken, in his 1996 article The Judges and Political Corruption in Italy, published in the Journal of Law and Society, explains that Italy's major political corruption scandal, known as Mani Pulite or Tangentopoli, which translates to Bribesville, formally began on the 17th of February 1992. The investigation exposed a deep-rooted system of bribery between political elites and business interests, ultimately leading to the collapse of Italy's First Republic. An article from The Guardian by Carroll, published on the 2nd of December 2000, explains that what started as an investigation into a cleaning contractor's bribe to Socialist Party official Mario Chiesa quickly snowballed into Mani Pulite, covering around $1.5 billion in illegal party funding. The scandal led to the suicide of financier Raul Gardini, mafia charges against former Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti, and the flight of Bettino Craxi, former Prime Minister and Socialist Party leader, to Tunisia, where he later died. The Independent in 1993 led readers to understand that Gardini, a charismatic businessman who expanded his family's Ferruzzi group into an international powerhouse, became entangled in the investigations. Facing arrest, he took his own life, symbolising the collapse of an era of unchecked political business collision and triggering the Ferruzzi Empire's downfall. Nelken highlights the vital role of Italy's independent judiciary, which, free from direct political control, carried out colossal investigations. Public broadcasts of the judicial proceedings shocked Italian society. Yet, despite early hopes for reform, figures like Silvio Berlusconi later rose to power, and corruption patterns persisted. Berlusconi's Forza Italia, along with the complete dispersal of traditional parties like the PSI and DC in the wake of Mani Pulite, marked the beginning of Italy's Second Republic in the 1990s. Tangentopoli happened because Italy's political system was already fragile, public outrage was rising already, and judges finally had the opportunity to act. Today, political corruption remains widespread, though fewer cases are officially reported. Public concern has declined sharply. In 1996, 91.8% of voters saw corruption as a major problem. By 2008, only 0.2% ranked it as the top issue, as Vannucci reported in 2009. In his article, The Controversial Legacy of Mani Pulite, published in the Bulletin of Italian Politics, Vannucci explains that weak enforcement, media fatigue, and stronger, more sophisticated corrupt networks have made corruption harder to detect and less risky. As a result, anti-corruption efforts have largely failed, and public trust continues to simmer beneath the surface, much as it did decades earlier. Chapter 2. The Awful 1992. Assassinations of Falcone and Borsellino. 1992 was a year that shattered Italy. Public fury exploded as Mani Pulite uncovered a corrupt political class, and the mafia struck back with horror, murdering heroes Giovanni Falcone on the 23rd of May 1992 and Paolo Borsellino on the 19th of July 1992, along with their loved ones and colleagues. On the 27th of March, Tony Gentile captured a now iconic photo of the two judges. Once overlooked, it became a powerful protest image by summer's end. That year marked the collapse of the First Republic, paving the way for Berlusconi's rise amid fear of communism. populism. This reflection draws on work by Chiari, The Conversation, and Cambridge University Press. Chapter 3, the 1992 currency crisis. In the 1992 currency crisis, it wasn't just speculation, it was weak fundamentals that sank Italy and threatened the UK. As Fratianni and Artis, 1996, argue in The Lira and the Pound, Italy's poor public finances and high inflation made the country vulnerable, forcing it to devalue the lira and exit the ERM, the exchange rate mechanism, which aimed to keep European currencies stable before full monetary union. The UK held on longer, with stronger fundamentals. Italy, in contrast, saw euro adoption as a way to anchor itself to a more credible system and regain stability. Italy changed forever in the 90s. It had to adopt the euro and fully embrace European integration, moving towards a more rules-based Northern European model. This shift was thanks to the 1992 Maastricht Treaty, which set out the roadmap for the euro and deeper EU cooperation. It established strict economic criteria for joining the eurozone, like low inflation and deficit limits, forcing countries like Italy to reform if they wanted to stay in the European project. With the Italian public that lived with a sense of dietrologia, many did not trust a more European form, also leading to concepts like Lega Nord. That idea is from Cento Bull in 2011. Chapter 4, Political Reform. In 1990s Italy, political culture was defined by public distrust, summed up in the saying, Piove governo ladro, it's raining, thief of a government. Italians demanded solutions while blaming the state for its failures. That was from Morellino and Tarchi in 1996. This growing cynicism, rooted in the trauma of fascism, the violence of the anni di piombo, the years of lead, and a culture of dietrologia, a belief in hidden plots, fed a desire for reform. Citizens no longer felt represented, and by the early 1990s, the old system had cracked. Between 1991 and 1996, Italy underwent profound political upheaval. A 1991 referendum began dismantling the electoral system. The Mani Pulite Clean Hands investigation in 1992 exposed systemic corruption. Within 2 years, once dominant parties like the Christian Democrats, DC, and the Italian Socialist Party, PSI, collapsed entirely. Others, like the Italian Communist Party, PCI, had already dissolved in 1991, re-emerging as the more moderate Democratic Party of the Left, PDS. Meanwhile, new forces arose. The Lega Nord tapped into regional discontent, while Italia dei Valori formed around anti-corruption magistrates. But it was Silvio Berlusconi, a media tycoon with no ties to the old establishment, who captured the public imagination. To many, he wasn't the past, he wasn't communism, and he seemed like a break from the corrupt old order. His party, Forza Italia, became the symbol of a new, media-driven politics. And yet, as Fabbrini in 2000 noted, the deeper structures of Italy's consensual democracy remained intact. Parliament still controlled legislation. The 1990s reforms then were less about institutional redesign and more about a cultural reckoning. Italians wanted to be heard. When the old system fell, what they got was not a revolution, but Berlusconi, a reflection of both their disillusionment and their hope for something, anything different. Chapter 5, Lega Nord. In the 1990s, Italy underwent major political upheaval, largely due to the rise of Lega Nord. The party championed a unique mix of neoliberalism, federalism, and ethnic identity politics. It pushed for tax cuts, reducing the role of the state and restructuring the Italian Republic through a radical form of federalism, something initially ridiculed, but by 1996, adopted in various forms by nearly all major parties apart from Rifondazione Comunista. While other parties aimed to preserve the welfare state, Lega Nord's federalism was designed to dismantle the centralised post-war order. This marked a major break from Italy's political consensus. As Cento Bull in 2011 argues, the Lega fused ethno-regionalism with an economic ideology drawn from both radical liberalism and the New Right, a political movement that by the 1990s was gaining ground across Europe. In Italy, the New Right embraced anti-statism, free market economics, and ethno-nationalist rhetoric, challenging the state-led economic traditions that had defined the post-war republic. As Spectorowski 2003 shows, Lega Nord's strength came not from historical culture or language, since Lombardy lacked coherent ethnic identity, but from inventing a second language of politics. Umberto Bossi replaced dialect with a new identity based on economic resentment and ethnic difference. He framed Milan as the capital of productive capitalism and Rome as a symbol of waste and lazy politics. Through this strategy, Lega Nord broke apart the old political order, replacing post-war unity with a vision grounded in exclusion, regionalism, and a radical rethinking of Italy's identity and structure. This was in full swing by the 1990s, yet not quite there as a political party in the previous decade. Chapter 6, New Society and the Updated Cultural Imagination. Before the 1990s, Italy was historically a country of emigration. This understanding is from Ceravolo, F.A., and Molina, S., in the year 2013. But during the 1990s, the reality began to reverse, particularly in northern Italy. This demographic shift planted the early seeds of the notion of second-generation Italians, a concept barely articulated at the time. Northern cities encountered rapid social transformation, growing immigrant communities, new religious presences, and increasing pressure on schools and public services. Political movements such as Lega Nord emerged in part as a reaction, promoting promoting a new form of exclusionary ethno-nationalism. In many ways, the 1990s marked the beginning of Italy reimagining itself. As Menarini in 1999 explained, Italian cinema experienced a creative decade. After the stagnation of the 1970s and a revival in the 1980s, the 1990s brought new energy and experimentation. Films like I Laureati 1995 captured the disillusionment and restlessness of a younger generation, while actors like Sergio Castellitto became emblematic of this moment. His performance in Il Grande Fausto epitomized the decade's tension between nostalgia and renewal, focusing on Fausto Coppi from then 4 decades ago. Yet, despite this innovation, Italian media remained largely homogenous since immigration was too recent to change the media industry. It was also during the 1990s period that Silvio Berlusconi strategically leveraged the power of media. Recognizing the central role of television and cinema in Italian life, he used them not only for entertainment, but as tools to influence the nation's cultural political identity. Chapter 7. Berlusconi, Football, Politics, Media, Power, Populism, and the Left's Response. In the 1990s, Italy underwent a profound transformation across its political, social, and economic landscape. Central to this was the Mani Pulite investigations, the collapse of the First Republic, and the rise of Silvio Berlusconi's populism. These events reshaped the structure and culture of Italian politics, creating legacies that extended well into the 21st century. Berlusconi entered politics at a moment of institutional crisis. The dismantling of Italy's post-war party system, driven by anti-corruption trials, left a hole of trust and leadership. Berlusconi strategically filled that space by presenting himself as an outsider, a successful entrepreneur who could bring order and modernity into a disillusioned country. He did not adopt the traditional elitist tone of politicians, but instead used language that was simple, accessible, and frequently drawn from football, most memorably Forza Italia, which became the name of his party. He rode a complex wave of sentiment, public disillusionment from the anni di piombo, widespread dietrologia, the belief in hidden plots behind political events, fear of a return to communism, and the desire for representation after decades of polarization. With the left fragmented and the PDS under Occhetto offering a weak opposition, partly due to lingering Cold War suspicions and an appetite for change, Berlusconi encountered little resistance. His rise was therefore not merely a reaction to institutional collapse, but a response to deeper cultural and psychological currents within Italian society. The idea that women were Berlusconi's main support base is a common myth, but Mauro Barizione, 2014, challenged this narrative. Analysing 6 general elections from 1994 to 2013, he found no consistent gender gap. Instead, it was housewives, not women in general, who tended to support Berlusconi's centre-right. These housewives, less integrated into the workforce and holding more traditional views, responded strongly to his leader-focused populist messaging. Barizione's findings emphasised the need to consider factors like employment status and education when analysing political behaviour. In the 1990s, Italy underwent significant political, social and economic changes driven by the Mani Pulite investigations, the collapse of the First Republic, and the rise of Berlusconi's populism. These events reshaped Italy's political landscape. As a media mogul, Berlusconi entered politics at a time of institutional crisis. After the fall of the post-war party system and anti-corruption trials, he capitalised on public disillusionment, fears of communism, and the belief in hidden political agendas. Berlusconi positioned himself as a common man fighting the post-communist elite. This approach was coined as technocratic populism by Castaldo and Versighelli in 2020, and this would influence future leaders like Mario Monti, Matteo Renzi, and Matteo Salvini, who merged populism with managerial competence or nationalism. Berlusconi's media and football ventures were inseparable from his political journey. His purchase of AC Milan in 1986 linked his media empire to the club's success, using football to build cultural influence. His media-driven political style was emotional, aspirational, and spectacular. In 1993, with his company in debt and Italy's political system in crisis, he launched his party, Forza Italia, which was heavily promoted through his media outlets. By early 1994, he declared his candidacy through a scripted video. Although his first government collapsed due to coalition issues and legal troubles, Berlusconi's media presence shaped an image of the family as both traditional and consumerist, reflecting his political vision of stability and material success. His campaigns mirrored the drama of sports, portraying politics as a contest. The fusion of media, business, sports and politics became his hallmark. Ginsburg in 2005 observes that under Berlusconi, television cultivated an image of the family as both traditional and consumerist, a microcosm of his political vision, stable yet aspirational, rooted in values yet driven by material success. Berlusconi embodied this persona. He was not a traditional charismatic leader, but a product of media performance, symbolising self-made success and upward mobility. The fusion of media, business, sport and politics, what Semino and Masci in 1996 describe as the footballisation of political language, became his signature approach and reshaped how Italian politics was understood and practiced. Conclusion. The 1990s were a turning point for Italy. The collapse of the First Republic, exposed by Mani Pulite, created a gap quickly filled by figures like Berlusconi, emblematic of a new Italy that was media-driven, market-oriented, and modern, yet marked by ethical ambiguity. His rise reflected broader transformations, the shift from old political loyalties to personality-driven politics, and from ideological certainty to pragmatic media spectacle. Meanwhile, Italy pushed to align with Europe through the Maastricht Treaty, even as domestic politics revealed deep ambivalence about international cooperation. Socially, immigration began reshaping Italian cities, and And while the country tried to move beyond the trauma of the anni di piombo, the past was never far behind. The decade didn't resolve Italy's contradictions, but it redefined the landscape. The following decades would continue to evolve Italy's new society with the base of the new politics and culture of the Italian 1990s.